Con. We live?
Yeah, let me make sure it popped up, but I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. You got it.
Con. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
With the brothers of Great Millstone, Charlotte, coming at you again with this live lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Before we get started with this lesson, we'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai Bahashem Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you we say shalom.
Shalom.
All right, so in this lesson, we're going to be touching on the tribe of Issachar, the fact that the so-called Mexicans belong to this tribe and they descend from this tribe. All right, and we're going to bring out, scriptures and evidence, articles, right, historical evidence, showing forth that these are the people that the Bible speak of. All right. Did you want to start off with this video?
Yeah, we'll start with this.
The indigenous language of the Aztecs or the Mayans?
Both of them.
Both of them. Mm-hmm. You said it was connected to an old Hebrew,
Ancient Paleo Hebrew.
ancient. So does that mean that language that was indigenous to what Mexico and Central America is today was a Semitic language?
Yeah. So what the schools teach you is an indoctrination. You get inducted into this indoctrination of what they want to call you or what they tell you that you are. So for instance, our people get called Hispanic, right? So Hispanic, not knowing what that term means, we call each other Hispanics, but that was under the Spaniard captivity. When the Spaniards came in 1492 and, raped, robbed, and pillaged, the people of Mexico, how they knew you were under that captivity was by calling you a Hispanic, how you belong to a family of a Spaniard that took you worked on their plantation, you were given their last name, like my last name, Ayala, that comes from whatever captivity my family got taken into. And maybe we have to work on fields, whether it was picking, tobacco or whatever that family had us doing, that's what we did. Now, Latino is different. Latino is under the Grecian captivity. That's if you were Latino, or how they differentiated both of them is Latino actually meant that your bloodline dated back to a Grecian or a Greek. And people that are from down south, Guatemala, El Salvador, just South America, they're not Latino. Their dads aren't Greek. We're still of this brown race. Like they call black people or African Americans that are here now Africans, and they're not from Africa. They actually just got taken into captivity in Africa while fleeing Israel. Africans are Hamites. They're from the tribe of Ham. So they're just a different people. And that's why people in Africa don't accept the blacks that are here, or the so-called blacks that are here in America, because they say those aren't our people, And, history, they won't teach you, in my era, they taught us a little bit of Aztecs and Mayas and Incas, just a little bit. But they never tell you how our people got here. They never tell you, we came from somewhere. They'll never tell you, how we read the stars. We used a thing called cenotes, which were these ponds, reflection ponds, to read the stars. While Columbus was looking up at the stars, trying to read them, trying to find these holy people that had a blessed land that was promised to them, full of riches and rich soil and all this and that. He was looking up at the stars, and he didn't know how to use the geometry using the reflection ponds. And that's how we got here. Our real name is not Aztec. It's Issachar. That's our real name. They gave us the name Aztec because it means people of time, because we kept time in numbers. And so that's where that came from. So it's really important to know your...
You want to speak on it, bro?
Yeah, man. Just as we're going through this lesson, it's just further proving that our people are waking up, man. All right. Hey, just like how we're going in on you so-called blacks, the tribe of Judah, Southern Kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, Levi. All right, it's time for Northern Kingdom brothers to wake up as well. All right, so-called Latino, so-called Native American. So you are the tribes as well, and what we're seeing is Yahweh Bashem Yahushua get into pour his spirit back into the earth. So, that was beautifully done by that brother, that we just played, because he knows who he is. He knows he's not a so-called Aztec, he's not a so-called Mexican. He knows he's Israelite, and that's the Lord pouring his spirit back on the earth, as it says in Ezekiel 37 chapter. But you got it.
Mm-hmm. One precept that came to mind whenever he was speaking was Deuteronomy 28 and verse 45. I'm going to read it real quick. It says, "Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy power, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." So through these curses that he mentioned too, one being called a proverb and byword, which is in the same chapter, I believe it's verse 37. The fact that you had the conquistadors, come in and sack us, also in Deuteronomy, verse 49, talks about, him being an eagle, pretty much a nation, right, that's sent from the other end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. Of course, that's talking about Esau, and then you also have the indoctrination that he mentioned, right? Them forcing us to worship Serapis Christos, or Jesus Christ, right? Which is also in Deuteronomy 28, verse 64, right? Where it mentions that they shall make us serve other gods that neither your fathers have known, even wood and stone, So these are the things that, our people were pretty much went through. This is something that our people went through, and this is something that's been recorded through history. So, and even in the scriptures, it tells us. We're reading it right now. So these are indicators as to who these people are, because the scriptures talk about that no, how's it go? Pretty much something along the lines that no nation has gone, or no nation has ended. I forgot exactly how it goes.
You talking about Ecclesiastes 4:16?
I believe so.
I got that for you. Hold on.
Because a lot of people say that the 10 tribes are lost, or that they're gone, or whatever, but now we're here.
Right. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 4:16. "There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this is also vanity and vexation of spirit."
Right. So there's no end of the people. Those people are here to this day, and how you identify them is through history. You go through history, and you're able to identify who these people are, the same way you identify these so-called archaeologists are able to identify certain peoples or their culture or whatever, is by going through the history. Is the same thing that we do. But this thing is in the spiritual sense. We dig into the scriptures, we're correlating history to make it show, to make known who these people are, right? Because it's something you mentioned before we clicked live. You mentioned that was it Hosea, or where it talks about how we will come back to remembrance. Can't remember.
Baruch. That's a good one too, though. Baruch, yeah.
You can that one.
Okay. Let's see. It's Baruch 4, and you know what verse it was, priest?
Baruch 2, around like near the bottom, like
Okay.
I think 28, something like that.
Okay, this is Baruch chapter 2 and verse 28. It says, "As thou spakest by thy servant Moses in the day when thou didst command him to write the law before the children of Israel, saying, if ye will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations where I will scatter them. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves."
Right, and that's pretty much what's happening now. Jake is waking up, pursuant to Ezekiel 37 chapter, right? That dry bones are coming together. That flesh is being put upon them, and also, most importantly, being that spirit, that breath, That breath has come upon them. Now we're rising up and making known who we are, or coming back to remembrance. I believe it was Joel. I was just looking through it.
If I could make a mention real quick off of what was read, because off the two precepts that we read, just now, going back to the Ecclesiastes, the 4th chapter, I said there's no end of the people, because the same history that is omitted, from our people's knowledge, dealing with the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Incas. Esau will perpetuate this idea that those people just mysteriously vanished, that you can't trace to what happened to those people, how they were once here, and then once Esau came to America, it's just like they all just disappeared. But like we was talking about, the Aztecs, those are so-called Mexicans, those are Issachar, man. All right. The Incans and the Mayans, those are Israelites as well. But Esau doesn't want that history really being talked about, because then that springs a rabbit hole that you fall into that eventually leads you back unto the 12 tribes of Israel. Because when Esau talks about Columbus, and the different the conquistadors that came over here to the Americas, they don't go into really who are those people that they conquered. They'll just automatically tell you that they're Hispanic or Latino, but never go into the history of what they actually were doing before they got over here. Because the only thing that they tell us is that they were some savages that was warring against each other. All right, that was sacrificing different tribes on these altars, eating their hearts and whatnot. But they don't never go into what they were doing over here in the first place, man. That's why when you heard the brother break down, the history, just going back to how you can correlate those Aztecs, those Mayans, and even the Incas. Those are all Israelites. All right, they got over here because those are the 12 tribes. It's like the 10 tribes that when you read about in the second Esdras, the 13th chapter, that made their way over here to try to serve the Lord, but eventually, through a period of time, because of prophecy's sake, they fell away. And we'll touch on that in a little bit, but just wanted to add that in there. So now we're at a point in time to where the Lord is pouring His Spirit out on Jake, to where all 12 tribes are waking up. All right, started with Judah first, but now you got the northern kingdom waking up as well. All right, you're starting to see more so-called Mexicans, so-called Native Americans coming back and reclaiming their heritage as well, man. So, like I said, in the land of our captivity, we shall remember ourselves, because when you sit there and put the pieces together, you so-called Latino and Native Americans, you suffer from the same curses the so-called black man face, man. When you read and you go down the list of Deuteronomy 28, those same curses hit y'all asses too, man.
And I just wanted to add too, because you made a point, of pretty much history, how these historians, how they be portraying our history, because a lot of the history has been erased.
Yeah,
a lot of the artifacts, a lot of the records that the Aztecs and the Mayans had, all that has been destroyed. So the little bit of I guess you could say records that was left over, that's all we got to deal with, to point back that these are the people. But to the spirit, we can tell that these are the people.
Yeah,
right. But because of these movies, you watch Apocalypto or some other movies that supposed to represent Issachar and Zebulon, they pretty much picture them as being savages, but other history says otherwise, that we were civilized. We had a society, we had writing, we had reading, we had schools, we had a government. But they don't teach you that. Even amongst Jake, Issacharites, modern day Issacharites, they don't understand history. They don't understand what was going on even in the during the Aztecs.
Right.
They really do believe that we were just out here with goddamn spears and running around in the woods, man.
And loincloths and shit.
Loincloths, right.
But see, they have a saying, it's two sides of a story. And Esau, through history, which really is his side of history, his story, he'll only give you the parts of history that he wants you to know, because it fits the narrative. Like you had we did the video, a couple weeks ago, dealing with this Edomite Matt Walsh, and how he was, boasting in how he was proud about, the colonialism, the European colonialism, because according to Edomite history, like you said, they came over here and conquered a bunch of primitive savages that pretty much couldn't even invent the wheel. But like you said, when you go into the Mayan, Aztec, even the Incan Empire, mainly just dealing with the Mayan and Aztec, they were sophisticated civilizations, man. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
shit that America, later on implemented into their society, the Mayans already had done. They had their own aqueduct system. They had their own, pretty much, civilized ways of living. As we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get into, man. So that's why I said you have to do your own research to actually go into and see the side that Esau won't tell you, man.
Right.
Got
Right.
precept. Okay.
Con.
God, it's Deuteronomy 33 and verse 18. It says, "And of Zebulun he said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and Issachar in thy tents." And going back to the what the brother had brought out. Essentially he talked about the Aztecs and the Mayans, in which they was dwelling in the same area at the same time. The so-called Aztecs and the so-called Mayans, which Mayan ultimately goes into springs of water, and that was going into Zebulun, and then the so-called Aztecs, that was Issachar. Issachar was very knowledgeable of the stars and the times and stuff like that, and you could see that those attributes in the so-called Aztecs, and they would make the even though it was off, they would go into the calendars and all the other stuff with the time and stuff like that.
Con, because if I can add to that, this is from an article dealing with the tribe of Issachar. I found off of Medium.com, but it going into it says how the tribe of Issachar settled in the Americas and the northern central region that is now known as Mexico. They they set up great ancient civilizations such as the Aztec Empire. The ancient Aztecs and Maya both were well versed, especially in the study of the sky, stars, and planets. Important Aztec / Maya buildings, which were temples, pyramids, palaces, etc., were associated to astronomy, similarly to the Egyptians' use of pyramids. Because you got to remember too, another thing that Esau won't tell you is that so-called Mexicans and Native Americans, hey, you were enslaved in Egypt as well. It wasn't just all black people, man. It was all the tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
they're
got,
just trying to put that separation in. It's like you want to say
Mm-hmm.
something, Sean?
Oh no.
Okay,
I got precept for you.
go ahead.
This is First Chronicles 12 and 32. It says, "And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Yasha'Allah ought do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment."
Right, because when you go into Issachar, that tribe, was able to read the star. That's why when you go into like the Mayan calendar, they predicated that off of being able to read the stars, man. That's why a lot of times when you go into the history, they were able to tell when it would rain, different different natural disasters and different things was going to happen because the Most High had blessed them with that knowledge of how to read the stars, man. And over time, because even when they came over here, as I'm gonna continue to read, they still had that, but eventually the Lord took that away from them, man. You know,
I got something in the commentary if I can.
let me read this real quick before we get that, Bubble Shah.
Okay.
It says the Aztec calendar is renowned in its accuracy for understanding the times. It is also true of ancient Issachar in Israel. The Aztec calendar is also linked to astronomy, and they even built observatories, just like with many other Native American and West Indian tribes or West Indies tribes. There are various journal writers that speak of early European settlers, concluding that indeed Aztec Mexicans were of Hebrew origin. I'm gonna just read this quick excerpt. It says many customs of the Mexicans strongly savoring at Judaism, besides that of circumcision, having already been noticed, such as their wearing fringes fastened to their garments, practicing frequent oblations, attending constant public places of worship, to which they were summoned by the blowing of the horns, as the Jews are to the synagogues, anointing themselves with oils, addressing each other with the appellation of brother and sister, their priests allowing their hair to grow long like Nazarites, though some were tonsured. They're frequently doing penance strewing dust on their heads and blacken themselves with ashes as a sign of mortification, and eating earth. And it quotes Isaiah 49:23 at the festival of Tet Tetzcalpoca. I would guess that's how you say that word. But just going into that correlation. But you got it.
Con. Mind if I share my screen?
I got you.
I have this article.
Damn, hold on, my mouse died.
So I had this article pulled up right here. It says Aztec astronomy, the study of stars and planets, and this goes into a little bit of what you were talking about. It says the Aztec civilization, renowned for its rich cultural tapestry and sophisticated societal structures, held a profound reverence for the celestial realm. Salakia. It says had held a profound reverence for the celestial realm. Their understanding of astronomy was not merely an academic pursuit. It was intricately woven into the fabric of their daily lives, influencing agriculture, religious rituals, which is something that Issachar was into. Especially being on top of those temples, they would sacrifice or do sacrifices up there at whatever time and hour time that they saw that the stars or whatever that they looked at, that figured that there was a time for that to be taking place. But it says influencing.
If I can add to you real quick, that's why eventually they started to go off and started to worship the stars and the sun and the moon and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I had some in the commentary. If I could read it off. Con, this was the commentary, David Gusick, 1 Chronicles 12:32. It says, the sons of Issachar who had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do. Some ancient traditions attribute this understanding of the times to skill in astrology, so-called astrology, that there is no foundation. But pretty much the point was that, Issachar has some type of knowledge or, understanding of the times, pretty much going into reading, and surveying the stars and stuff like that, like we're going into.
Mm-hmm. Con. So continuing on in this article, it says influencing agriculture, religious rituals, social organization. As we delve into the world of Aztec astronomy, we uncover how their observations of the stars and planets shape their worldview and cultural identity. So it says central to Aztec beliefs was the idea that the cosmos was a living entity imbued with spiritual significance, which is true. When you go to Genesis, the first chapter, when the creation of the stars and sun and the moon, the Alahim said that it's pretty much meant for a sign. They were meant for signs and seasons and for days and years. So there are spiritual significances in blood moons, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, these comets, flying by, and these planetary alignments is always a sign that the Most High is about to do something.
That's right.
But it says the movements of celestial bodies were interpreted as divine messages, guiding the Aztecs in their agricultural practices and ceremonial observances. You see? It says this article explores the intricate relationship between the Aztecs and the heavens, highlighting the importance of celestial phenomena in their mythology and societal functions. By examining their astronomical knowledge and tools, we gain insight into a civilization that navigated life with the stars as their compass, which they did, and it will only make sense, that they were that whenever in Second Ezra, the 13th chapter, in the 40th verse, how it will make sense that some of the stars or the guidance that they were receiving was through of course the angels, but Issachar was probably one of the ones that was keeping an eye on that and guiding the path.
I had a precept for you.
Con.
This is Luke chapter 21 and 25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity and sea and the waves roaring. Now, we utilize the scripture now for us to go into prophecy, but Issachar had extensive knowledge of that back then. All right, they were able to go into detail and be able to foretell, certain events off of being able to read the heavens, man.
Mm-hmm.
And so little by little, the Lord is giving us that information back, but we'll get that full, full knowledge of this when we get in the kingdom of heaven.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it on this article. It goes on a little bit more into it, but that was pretty much the point.
God.
But if we can, Baba Kashak, can brother get Genesis 30? And we'll start at 14.
You got it, you want?
God.
Just pretty much touching on the birth of Issachar.
God, this is Genesis chapter 30 and verse 14. It says, and Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes.
Right. So mandrakes is pretty much a plant that was used to aid fertility and induce conception. So, it's pretty much like a root type of plant. And that was pretty much Rachel wanted it because she wasn't fertile enough.
Yeah, it's an aphrodisiac.
Right. You can go ahead.
And she said unto her, it is a small matter that thou hast taken my husband. And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And the Most High hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the 5th son. And Leah said, the Most High hath given me my hire, because I have given my my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar.
Right. So that's pretty much the origin of the name of Issachar and the origin of Issachar, one of the patriarchs. But Baba Kashak, if you don't mind, you want breaking that word down, Issachar, that name?
Khan. Go to the word for Issachar, the name Issachar. And it says Issachar, it says pretty much in Hebrew it will be YashShakar. So it will be YASH and then Shakar, which is SHAKAR. And the Yash part in the beginning, when you see Yah in front of a word, it will be he, because Yah, you build with your hands. So he, the Shah goes into the teeth. All right, and the teeth comes from the root word Shanan, which means to teach. So he, when you go into the teeth, all right, it goes into teach. So he is, all right, and then Shakar means to hire or wages. So he is hired. That's pretty much what Issachar goes into. Because when you look at Issachar, they some of the hardest workers. Issachar can turn anything into a job.
Right. What's it called? An omen.
Mm-hmm.
So from there we can get Genesis 49 and 1, unless the brother had anything.
You had a quick precept, just add to what you just read, just to prove that we know that's talking about the so-called Mexicans of today. This is Romans chapter 8:16. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. Because, as you said, man, the Issachar in the scriptures is known as as a donkey, a hard worker, and that fits the so-called Mexicans of today. Because what other people on the planet work harder than Mexicans?
Mm-hmm.
You give them any job, and they don't care how much they get paid. They don't care how long it takes them. They just go out there and work. Hey, the houses that's being built is mainly by Issachar. The one that's always in the kitchen cooking up all the food is all Issachar. Really America's backbone as of lately, the last however many years you want to call it, it's really been Issachar holding the weight, man. Because they're the ones doing the jobs that nobody want to work. This is why when Trump got in office and started, deporting all of them, this is why, businesses are sorry. Hey, we go to food places now, the food's trash because all the so-called Mexicans are gone, man. They got Esau whack ass in the goddamn kitchen, not seasoning the food right, man.
Mm-hmm. And flavorless, saltless.
Man, real shit, bro. That shit, yo. Y'all got it. I'll go in a little bit later, but y'all got it.
This is Genesis chapter 1, and Genesis chapter 49 and verse 1. It says, And Yaakov called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days.
Right. So pretty much, like we always bring this precept out when we talk about the tribes or break down the tribes, because this is something that's a future prophecy that will fall upon these tribes, right? Specifically here with Issachar, these are some things that's going to be like signs or characteristics that Issachar will embody.
Yeah, identification markers to let you know where Issachar is in the end days.
Right. Con. So
Verse
we can skip
2.
down. Oh yeah,
Con.
read verse 2. Salakia.
Gather yourselves together, and hear, sons of Yaakov, and hearken unto Israel your father. Going down to Genesis 49 and 14, it says, Issachar is a strong ass, couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute.
Right. So, and the brothers already broke that down pretty much. Issachar being that strong ass, that donkey, right? I want to share my screen real quick. Bear with me.
If I can read this while you're getting it. You gonna say something? Go ahead. If you gonna you say something, go ahead, bro.
No, I was just gonna mention, because you mentioned a donkey, right? Pretty much on the AI overview, just real quick. This is a donkey holds significant cultural and historical importance, often symbolizing humility, hard work, and perseverance, with their image appearing in various religious texts and folklore, including the Bible's depiction of Yahushua riding a donkey into Jerusalem. So pretty much here, meaning pretty much pointing to hard work. So a donkey is a what they call it, a beast of burden.
Yep.
So they carry all the loads. Sometimes they're used to push and pull things. They're pretty much used in the field, used for work, right? So in that same fashion, Issachar is described as that hard-working donkey, that field worker.
Just to add to you, just going into that donkey definition, it's back in that Medium article dealing with Issachar. It says Issachar is symbolized as a donkey. Donkeys are sturdy, built well for stability, being lower to the ground than horses, and such can handle heavy loads of work very well. This also symbolizes the Mexican people, as they are hard workers willing to work humble jobs.
Yep. Yeah, because pretty much all the jobs that Issachar takes on are the jobs that no one else wants to do. Working in the field, working them hot ass hours in the field, in the hot ass tropical climate. Goddamn, building roofs, building these pretty much a lot of the infrastructure that's being done is being done by Issachar. Right. So just in my neighborhood, the last week there was Issacharites coming down my neighborhood, fixing and repairing some people's houses. And it's always Issachar. You always have Esau that comes in. They're like the spokesperson, and then next Issachar comes through and starts doing all the work.
Right. Yeah, Esau is like he's normally like the manager,
right?
Come in and just checking to see what they're doing. But for the most part, you rarely see Edomites out there when it comes to construction anymore. You got I always mix them up. Was it blue collar or white collar? I forgot which is which.
I think it's blue collar.
Yeah,
blue collar. Yeah, you got them certain Edomites, but the majority of the time it's Issachar, man.
See, you got right here image. I pulled it up right here. Y'all better see it?
It's on the screen.
Yeah. Okay, just making sure. But this image right here shows is pretty much that pretty much that image that shows a donkey couching down between two burdens. You have Issachar here, load them up, right? But even just on a little side note, whenever you go to some of these Mexican restaurants or Mexican places of business, sometimes you'll see like a donkey with two burdens on the side.
Yeah, that's true.
I seen it a couple times. Going into these restaurants. So just showing you, man. Hey, like brother read Romans the 8th chapter, right? The Spirit beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, man. You can't get around it.
Kind. Another point to add into, just dealing with the work aspect. Hey, Issachar, do what they call the siesta, where
Right.
noon. So they taking a break. They chilling, man. That's heavy in Issachar culture. If I can read this off of here, it says siesta is an essential part of Mexican culture, and this also is described in Jacob's first sentence above that rest is good.
That's right. And I have this article to back you up. It says this is from Vacation Villas of Mexico, but it says fiestas and siestas, understanding the unique festivities and traditions that define Mexican culture. Let me see if I can increase the size. Okay, so it says Mexico is a country known for its vibrant traditions and rich cultural heritage. One of the aspects that truly sets Mexican culture apart are its fiestas and siestas. These unique festivities and traditions play a significant role in defining and shaping Mexican identity. In this article, we will delve into the world of Mexican fiestas and siestas, exploring their origins, their significance, and the profound impact they have on Mexican society. Hold on, let me skip down.
All right, because if I can add to that, because this is why one of the most visited, vacation parts of the world is Mexico. Because as you're going into with the fiesta and siestas, hey, Issachar is a very, welcoming and friendly people. Like when me and my red went to Cozumel, Mexico on the cruise or whatnot, as soon as we stepped on the private beach, man, Issachar was, it was like they was ready to serve, man. And they love Jake, man. I had my Jordans on with a LeBron jersey, man. They was like, that's all they want to talk about. We love LeBron, we love Jordan. It's all that was dope. It was a dope experience though, man. Beautiful island, blue waters. It was nice out there, man. So I could tell, that's Mexico is a highly coveted spot for vacation.
Con. But it says on this article, it says the siesta is deeply rooted in Mexican society, with many businesses, especially in smaller towns and rural areas, closing down during this time to allow employees and customers to rest. Universities, schools, and government offices also have a break during midday hours to accommodate the siesta tradition. And and I can attest to this. Being with my uncles and helping them work sometimes. Like earlier when I was younger, I would help them, help around the backyard because they would have like a little farm, kind of a little gardening area. And one day, and this all comes back to me because Jake would work all morning, wake up early in the morning, around 5 or 6 in the morning, get up, start working. And right whenever it gets around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I remember my uncle was like, let me go get some beers. He went and got some beers. They came back and we just chilled for like a good 2 hours. And then went back to work. We ate some food and we drank some beer and we went back to work. So that's in the sense of siesta because it's pretty much a time of leisure.
Yeah. They say rest is good.
Because they bust their ass, the whole time and then they rest a bit. Then they go back, to finishing up the work. When you see Jake work, man, they work hard, man. Like they can get things done in like 1/3 of the time, half the time than what you see Esau try to do.
Right.
But it says beyond its practical purpose, the siesta also holds a cultural significance. It reflects the importance Mexican place on maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Right, because it's all about balance. Jake knew that. But it says, in valuing personal well-being, in a fast-paced world, the siesta offers a moment of respite and self-care, allowing individuals to recharge before continuing with the day's activities. Right, and that's the opposite to what Esau gives you. It gives you what 30 minutes of break, which ain't
Right.
shit. Has you
Right.
work 12 hours, busting your ass. Like at the end of the week, you're fucking drained.
Mm-hmm.
But applying these traditions, having that, like it says, that healthy work-life balance, people can work at their max potential, rest, and then come back and work again without being drained, without being burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go back. We
I
can
had a
get
little,
Oh, you have something, Mark?
yeah, I had a little bit more to add into that just for that.
Con.
It says Mexican culture, and this, sorry, we go up. Mexican culture. Mexico is a favorite vacation spot because of the beautiful weather and sights. This is also what initially drew Issachar to that land, as it is stated above that the land was pleasant. Could you read that part again in Genesis, Baba Kushar? You want?
God. God, this is Genesis chapter 49 of verse 15. It says, and he saw that, I'll read from verse 14. It says, Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good in the land, that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute.
Right. So as I just read, it said Mexico is a world favorite vacation spot because of the beautiful weather and sights. This is also what initially drew Issachar to that land, as it was stated above that the land was pleasant. The tribe of Issachar settled in the Americas in the northern central region that is now known as Mexico. They set up great ancient civilizations such as the Aztec Empire, the Aztec and Mayans, which is, we read that earlier. I'm gonna read it again, but just showing that, that's part of the reason why they came over here. All right. When you read Second Ezra's, the 13th chapter, man. All right, they came over here to dwell on this land and serve the Most High, but we understand they eventually have to fall away for prophecy's sake.
Mm-hmm. Con. I want to make some mention too on that latter part of that verse where it says, and bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant into tribute. So pretty much when you go into that word tribute, it pretty much just means work, right? Even go into that Latin or the Spanish word trabajar, right? Which just means work. So pretty much Issachar became subject unto hard labor, or submitted himself unto hard labor, right? And I got this article pulled up. It says, it's from SanDiegoRed.com. It says Mexicans are the hardest working people in the world.
Yeah.
Right. But it says the Organization of Cooperation and Economic Development reveals new statistic of the working population, and part of the results showed that Mexicans are the hardest working people with shifts that last up to 10 hours daily or more. It says this includes paying hours as well as non-paying, talking about work done at home. It says in Belgium, the shifts are much shorter, with shifts lasting 7 hours. Japan, on the other side, consolidating itself as a country where employees receive a higher paycheck. So, of course, the nations, they're living good. They're working 7 hours. I mean, they ain't even getting the full 40 hours, I think.
Right.
But yeah, that was just it. That was it on this. I just wanted to bring that out because even it's commonly known around the world that Mexicans are the hardest working people. Right. Whenever it comes to jobs, especially here in the United States, who they want to hire. If you want to want things done quick and cheap, you hire a Mexican.
Right.
Let me see. We can go back. Did we finish out that Genesis? Yeah. We can go to Deuteronomy 33. Huh?
You want me to go back to Genesis?
Nah, that was it. We'll get Deuteronomy 33. We'll read that again. There was some articles I wanted to bring out on this.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 18. It says, and of Zebulun he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and Issachar in thy tents.
Right. So pretty much stating that Issachar and Zebulun will be, neighbors. And when you read in the history, really Issachar and Zebulun, when you read about the Mayans and the Aztecs, which really the Aztecs, they weren't called Aztecs, they were called they were called the Mexica,
Mm.
right? It was really the what they call them, archaeologists. They started calling them Aztecs, but they called themselves the Mexica. That's where you get that name Mexico from, the land of the Mexica. But before they were called the Mexica, they were actually they descend from a civilization called the Toltecs, not the Olmecs, but the Toltecs. And let me get this real quick. I want to put this on the screen because when you go deeper into the history, you know, and this is going to lead us to Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it says the Maya Toltec controversy at Chichen Itza. So it says Chichen Itza and Tula have numerous architectural similarities in a number of their constructions. This Toltec Maya connection is widely considered powerful, unprecedented, and unique in Mesoamerica. Unlike most Maya sites, some of Chichen Itza's buildings have the traits of the Toltecs. Now, again, the Toltecs were the Mexica, the Aztecs, right? But then they, like history, you know, when you try to look up history of this, it's kind of vague, but you could tell that something happened, they fell away, and then they came back again as the Aztecs or the Mexica. But before, at this time period, they were called the Toltecs. But it says a historically powerful indigenous group from the modern day Mexico. So what I just read pretty much just states that the Maya and the Toltecs, so Issachar and Zebulon, were pretty much beside each other because they were talking about how the Chichen Itza's buildings have traits of the Toltecs. So just showing you they were living amongst each other. They were sharing information. They were neighbors. So it says the explanation of these similarities is a point of controversy among the scholars of the Toltec and the Maya fields. Certain historical records caused many early scholars of the region to assume that the Toltec invasion from Tula, Hidalgo, usually placed in the 9th or 10th centuries, was responsible for the new wave of Mexican-style Maya building after the rest of the building in Chichen Itza were built. But really, when you go into it, really they were just neighbors. They were beside each other. They shared the same viewpoints, right? As we're going to go further into, you know, they had the same belief system too.
And that's the spirit that the Lord had that happen in today's time, because as we read in the prophecy, it said they were neighbors. When you look at that ancient map, you know, Zebulon and Issachar were neighbors back then. So it's just the spiritual parallels is furthermore proved through the spirit that we know those are the people.
Mm-hmm. Con. Yes, I'm not.
You want verse 19?
I want to. I do want that, but I want to get this first.
Okay.
I want to get this article too. It's from worldhistory.org, Toltec civilization. This is the point I want to make because, like I said, the Aztecs descend, or the Mexica descend from this Toltec civilization. It says the Toltec civilization flourished in ancient central Mexico between the 10th and mid-12th centuries, continuing the Mesoamerican heritage left to them by early cultures. The Toltecs built an impressive capital at Tolan. Ultimately, they passed on their heritage to civilizations such as the Aztecs, who regarded the Toltecs as a great and prosperous civilization, even claiming descent from them. So there you go. Now, something I wanted to get right here, because I mentioned Quetzalcoatl, right? And Kukulkan. Because this is this character is supposed to represent Yahweh Shah coming over here. Let me see. It says almost every pre-Aztec site in central Mexico has been directly influenced by the ancient Toltec civilization. Historians believe that they inherited much of their archaeological heritage from the inhabitants of Teotihuacan. The Toltecs were a highly developed culture which was rich in architectural achievement. The Toltec reached a height of power under a god named uh, Topitzin. Topitzin moved the capital to Tula in approximately 900 AD. Sometime during his 19 years of reign, he was named Quetzalcoatl. He and the luxurious lifestyles of the Toltecs became legendary. No one before them had ever lived in such splendor. The Song of Quetzalcoatl describes Tula as a true paradise where cotton grew in colors and the soil yielded enormous fruit. So I'm pretty sure that they're touching on when Yahushua came over here, right?
Yep. I got that precept
And
for you too, if you want it.
Con, yeah, you can go ahead and get that.
Con, this is St. John 10 and 16. It says, and other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
So
So, right. So
yeah.
after pretty much Yahushua was crucified and resurrected, he came over here and spoke to them over here because it
Yep.
was needed for all the tribes to hear this word and to come to the belief of Yahushua.
Yep. Because
But you already know he came over here because there's I have other articles touching on that. But Salaki, you were gonna say something?
yeah, I had a quick video I wanted to play just dealing
Con.
with Quetzalcoatl, because that's one of the reasons why whenever Esau came over here, Issachar didn't really put up a fight, because according to the prophecies they had, Quetzalcoatl or Yahushua, it was a certain way that Yahushua they was told he was going to come back, and when they saw the conquistadors, a lot of, especially dealing with Hector, what's his name?
Cortez.
Yeah, they thought that he was Yahushua. So I just want to play this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, Cortez had arrived during a sacred year on the Aztec calendar, the year when the Aztec god called Quetzalcoatl was supposed to return. An ancient prophecy foretold that the bearded and feathered god Quetzalcoatl would return on a ship from the east to take back and rule the land of the Aztecs.
So just playing that snippet just showed, if Yahushua didn't come over here and speak to the Northern Kingdom like we're talking about, then how would they have prophecies of him?
Right. Right. Con. Oh shit, Salakia. Let me see. Where was it? Salakia, bear with me.
Good.
All right. So going back to this article, it says the word Quetzalcoatl is a combination of the Nahuatl words. Quetzal is a magnificent bright green bird that is native to the Guatemalan highlands, and coatl means snake. Thus, Quetzalcoatl is depicted as a snake adorned with feathers. Because really, when you go into a snake, a snake represents wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the scriptures, represents wisdom, but also in ancient Mayan or Aztec culture, it represents wisdom as well. The Quetzal, the bird, the magnificent bird with bright green feathers, is pretty much represents majesty. But going down, it says the ancient Mayans called him by the name of Kukulkan. Ancient myths described Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, as revered through Central America and Mexico for his gentleness, intelligence, and his patronage of arts. The Aztecs believed that he created the world, which he did.
Man, come on, bro.
It says, and they dedicated temples to him. You see, so whenever he was here, they dedicated temples to him, and they gave righteous sacrifices, or they conducted righteous ceremonies on those temples. But over time, they became corrupt and started, going off, as Jake does.
Yeah, and I got that for you. We were talking about before we cut the camera on. So just reading this excerpt before I get the scripture. Could you hold Hosea 8:13?
God.
It says back in this article, We also see from Moses' blessing of Issachar that there is a long and consistent history of architecture sown in the culture of this tribe. Initially, the temples of Issachar were used to honor Yahweh before they eventually fell away and started sacrificing humans on them and even started eating the heart and other pieces of the body. Because going into what you read earlier in Deuteronomy 28th chapter, all right, we was going to, eventually fall away and begin to serve, different idols that, that we see what they end up worshiping, the stars, the sun, and like when you watch Apocalypto, that's a remnant of kind of what they was doing. Esau wants that image to be shown in that movie to think that's all they were doing, but for the most part, it started out on a righteous tip because when we read Second Ezra the 13th chapter, and I keep quoting, you might as well grab that real quick. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
They came over here to actually keep the laws, all right, to the best of their ability. But then, like I said, prophecy had to happen. So this is Second Ezra chapter 13 and starting at verse 40. It says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Osea the king, who Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country which never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the water till they passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Azarah. All right, so just going into that point of the 10 tribes originally came over here to the Americas to keep the laws of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. This is why what we read earlier and what we've been talking about, the Northern Kingdom, whether it's so-called Latin tribes or the so-called Native American tribes, they have Hebrew origins because they come from the land of Israel. So a lot of the customs and things that they had originally was them trying to keep the ways of the Lord, but prophecy had to take place. This is why they began to lose their way and began to start out of worshiping, and that it got intermingled with the ancient cultures, which is why Esau will tell you is Hebraic roots, but he'll never touch on that and put two and two together to prove that those people are Israelites.
Right. The pretty much what Esau plays off is the confusion of history.
Exactly. The puzzle pieces they're not all the way there. So it's like you get one of them big ass like 500 piece puzzles.
5,000.
Yeah. You're sitting there trying to put the pieces together. So you'll get the outside first, and then all the middle parts is all missing pieces. That's what Esau has done.
Mm-hmm. God. Let me get this next article real quick.
Yeah, let me get that precept real quick.
Oh yeah. Con, go ahead.
This is Hosea 8 and 13. It says, they sacrifice flesh for the sacrifices of mine offerings and eat it, but the Lord accepteth them not. Now will he remember their iniquity and visit their sins, they shall return to Egypt.
Right. So off of what we just read and what we saw in that clip, all right, Issachar, as we know, they were warned against other tribes as well. And so what eventually started out as them keeping the laws and sacrificing to the Lord the correct way, as time happened, they began to fall away, start out of worshiping, and they started, going to war with other tribes and cannibalism, human sacrifice, and all that. And that's what eventually led Yahweh Bashim Yahushua to send the conquistadors over here to the Americas to put Issachar in slavery. All right. This is why, like I read, or I showed you in that thing. All right. I forget the king's name at the time. That was when Hector Cortez came. But
Montezuma?
Yes, yeah, Montezuma. Yeah. They was wanting to fight. But Montezuma was like, nah, that's Yahushua or Quetzalcoatl. And so when he came over here, he pretty much brought them in, showed them, the temples and everything that was doing. And eventually, like Esau always does, he backstabbed them and took them over.
Mm-hmm.
They originally wanted to put them devils to death, though, man. But him being a fool, he allowed Esau to get in there, and then the rest is history.
Right. And this article right here pretty much touches on it a little bit.
Con.
But pretty much it says right here the myth of Searo Topitsin Quetzalcoatl, a summary. So it says, I'm just gonna skip down a little bit. It says, our prince plumed serpent. That's pretty much the name of Quetzalcoatl. Our prince plumed serpent. It says was a holy man and a patron of the post-classical Toltec city of Tolan, which is now thought to be modern-day Tula. Situated in the state of Hidalgo, north of Mexico City, the Toltecs were a Nahua group that populated much of the Central Highlands around the 10th and 12th centuries AD. Their contribution to Mesoamerica history included the spreading of post-classical cult of the plumed serpent into Maya Yucatan. They also helped develop art such as writing and painting in central Mexico. But what I wanted to get was this right here, this painting right here. It says, Quetzalcoatl lets his own blood in self-sacrifice. And who else did this? Yahweh Shah. And it looks like he's sticking like a nail through his leg. If you can see it. And they're painting with wings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the fact that he has dark skin. Look, he has dark skin.
Yep.
So let me read a little bit more, and I'm going to get the next article, which goes even more. But it says, archaeological evidence suggests that the Toltecs did exist as a people, but solid information on their roots and history is scarce. For a rounded view on how important the Toltecs were to Mesoamerica, we rely on the 16th century Nahua text to shed more light on their identity and actions. These books mingled myth and reality together. An example of this can be found in the details surrounding the battle between the priest Topitzin and his nemesis Tezcatlipoca. So it says the Aztecs and the other Nahua groups living in Mexico around the time of the conquest greatly admired their Toltec predecessors. Codices describe Tolan as to be an earthly paradise bursting with huge crops. So whenever Yahushua was here or came on this side, it says that city, Tolan, was described to be an earthly paradise bursting with huge crops that could be harvested all year round. Described as skilled healers and pious citizens, the Toltecs never felt hunger nor feared the wrath of the gods. Portrayed as a refined and gentle priest, Topitzin Quetzalcoatl apparently preferred to appease the gods' thirst for blood by performing self-sacrifice. Now you gotta eat the meat and spit out the bones, because
Right.
it goes into this other bullshit, right? But it says prefer to appease the gods' thirst for blood by performing self-sacrifice and animal offerings than to spill the blood of his beloved Toltec followers. Let me see. I think that was it on this. I think this is the next one, the one that I really want to go into.
Still want me to hold that Deuteronomy 33?
Yeah. Continue to hold that, because I have something I want to touch on that one.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me scroll down. So right here it shows it again. Right, the same image. Right, so right here. Oh wait, no, that ain't it. Slovakia. Right, so here's another image. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this is another a bust of Quetzalcoatl right here. And you can see that they chipped down the nose. But you see, you can tell that's Jake right there. That's a dark-skinned man.
Right.
Let me see. See, he's also referred to as the evening star, or not the evening star, the morning star right here. The morning star, Quetzalcoatl. Okay, right here. It says place of devotion. It says offerings were regularly presented to Quetzalcoatl and Tenochtitlan, but he was also celebrated in other cities like Colula and Chichen Itza, containing a round temple dedicated to the cult of Quetzalcoatl, was considered a pilgrimage destination across central Mexico. So pretty much Issachar and Zebulon were treating this as if it was like the like Jerusalem. You got to go to the temple. You got to make that voyage over there to celebrate these high holy days.
Maybe.
But it says top-ranking priests from Tenochtitlan were awarded the name Quetzalcoatl. The Aztec leaders, upon coming into power, were obliged to first worship at the temple of Colula. So it says, did Montezuma really think Cortez was a god? This is what you were talking about, priest.
Mm-hmm.
But it says the final twist in Quetzalcoatl's story came with the arrival of the Spanish conquerors, who claimed that Cortez was welcomed as the long departed Quetzalcoatl, who in another story did not kill himself. Well, they're pretty much like I said, they're playing off the confusion of history and the legend or whatever. But it says did not kill himself, but left on a long voyage over the ocean, promising one day to return. So this is no accounts written by the Aztecs agree with Cortez and his men. And Professor Felipe Fernandez Armesto tells us why. But it gives me another link. But pretty much the point being is that at that time, like the brother mentioned, Montezuma thought that Hernan Cortez was Quetzalcoatl coming back because, like it says, he left on a long voyage over the ocean.
Right.
Which I'm sure Yahushua did, but I'm pretty sure he flew on a chariot. That's why they called him the plumed serpent.
Right. And then on top of that too, it say he came from the east.
Right.
Know? So that the prophecies that they were told, he believed that was Yahushua or Quetzalcoatl. And then on top of that, just even further, that was prophecy that all that was supposed to happen that way as well. Because when you go in the curses, Deuteronomy 28 and 49, it says, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Because that's what happened once they came over here, man. They took them down quick, man. Because like I said, he let Esau into his home and all that. And I want to add to that precept by bringing this last part out of this article. It says, going back off of that Hosea we read earlier, here in Hosea, when Yahweh states that these Hebrews will return to Egypt, he is speaking of the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, which is stated in a few passages prior. These human sacrifices were an abomination to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, so he allowed them to be conquered. We know through history that Issachar, the Aztecs, fell into captivity to Spain by the early 1500s. Overall, an estimated 350,000 natives were killed during the Spanish invasion by 1524. The last Aztec or Hebrew emperor, I'm not sure you say his name. You can look it up. I can't pronounce that. Was captured and hanged by the Spanish conqueror Cortez before building a new capital, Mexico City, for the colony of New Spain. So just adding to that point.
Mm-hmm. Con. No, yeah, man. Like I said, like we've been stating in all these videos, pretty much all the tribes went under the curses. All the tribes, these curses fell upon these tribes at one point or another, and end up to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
But we can finish off that was it Deuteronomy 33?
God, this is this is Deuteronomy 33 and 19. It says, they shall call the people unto the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall suck.
Right, pretty much those mountains is pretty much those temples that they built, those pyramids. Right. And as we just read in that article, they were all supposed to they did pilgrimage, to go to these temples, to go to these pyramids and partake in those ceremonies and those sacrifices.
Mm-hmm.
But you go ahead.
For there For they shall suck of the abundance of the seas and of treasures hid in the sand.
Right. And when you look at Mexico, especially in modern day, a lot of the oil that they're getting is from the Gulf of Mexico. That what's his name? Donald Trump is trying to call Gulf of America, but when you look at Mexico's drilling or oil drilling, it's done right there on the coast, right there in the Gulf on the southeast coast of Mexico, right there in the Gulf. So and also they're also known for having a lot of fishing sites, right? A lot of good what they call it, tournament fishing and shit like that be happening over there too. Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, I didn't want to make this too long, because I do have other history I want to touch on, but I'll probably save that for when we do Zebulon.
Yeah, that's fine. I ain't have nothing else. You got something else?
Wow.
So yeah, that was pretty much it. Touched on Issachar. Pretty much that's which make up the so-called Mexicans. So we pray the lesson was edifying. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To the next time, we're going to say Shalom.
Shalom.